information not only needs to come, at the right quantity, and given to the people and interpreted to the people, but also needs to be given in sufficient time. We felt a lot of it was rushed. People need this information upfront, so that they are able to have reflected on it, to be able to come and have a discussion. For instance, we gave them information and told them read it right away, get to understand it right away, and that was a challenge. I think another lesson which is related to that is that, of course, a bit of the discussion requires a certain level of literacy, unless that information is interpreted, one, in either Swahili or in mother tongue in some of these communities. In the three counties, they were all very different. Murang'a, Turkana and Homa Bay are very, 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 very different.
In Murang'a, there were very heated arguments around the choices that they were making. But then a lot of that was informed by people's own understanding about how government sectors work and what the objective of those sectors should be. And in a way, we found people borrowing a lot from their own experiences. So if it is in education or infrastructure, there was a general conceptualization with the group about how those sectors should work in determining the development agenda of the country. And so we noticed there was a bit more of borrowing from experiences than the information that we had presented before them.
I would give infrastructure 60%.
Infrastructure 60?
And give education 40%. We were trying to see, after 4 years, we produce 1 million from 4 rivers. 70,000 got to university. Out of the 70,000, 10% are focus and material. The remaining 930,000 are Kulima, and they are not adding as much as infrastructure would. Garissa Road was built by NYS sometimes back. NYS guys are trained for 6 months. And they built that road, and it's one of the best roads in the country. So we don't need to put 70% in education so that we produce great minds. We just need to be organized.
The reason being, the government is a community entity, or rather the creation, the idea behind the creation of a government is that it is a community entity. Education should never be a business enterprise whereby people are forced to pay for knowledge. But for infrastructure, we can get private sector chipping in a lot of money. So it is the responsibility of the citizens through public or government-public interactions, partnerships, that they build the infrastructure. But for education, it is government. I want us to draw back our minds to the time that Africa was getting their independence.
Yes.
That governments that invested in education first were able to absorb the students. Wenye walikuwa wanamaliza, waka-absorb kwa kazi vizuri. So the population was getting employed. But those governments that decided that they needed to set away the Europeans and the colonialists without getting the educated people, their companies were collapsing. So I tend to believe that the one that should get much more government support is education, so that it boosts the other projects.
60 to education and 40 to infrastructure. How many? 3? Oh, the number has gone up? 1, 2, 3, 4. Infrastructure 60% and education 40%. How many? So Turkana is one of the marginalized counties up north, and I think for Turkana again, this was a mixed group where you had professionals, you had business people, you had people who basically don't work, and again this is one group that didn't have very many people who've engaged with the budget before. But I think one thing that we noticed with Turkana, number one, is that they seemed to have a very clear idea after going through the information that we presented them, on the information that they would need to better understand the process and to better make the decisions that we were asking them to make that day, which was pretty interesting and is something that we did not see in Murang'a. So in Turkana, there was a bit more clarity in terms of the information that they think they would need to engage better with budgets, which I think was a big plus. And the reason why that might have been the case is also because we saw people in Turkana borrow a lot more from the materials that we presented them.
The literacy is at over 80%. That, and then the infrastructure of education, they are still low, because we are talking about a community that has been marginalized for over 50 years. The other thing that is very contentious, the reason why answering that question is very difficult, we just discovered oil. Economy here is very poor. Employment rate is also very low. So while exploring energy might cause employment to the community around. So in my view, because they are all important, employment is as important as education, I will give it a 50-50.
Wengi ambao wamesoma zaidi na hawana wote kazi. So mimi kwa hiyo 100 nitapatia energy and infrastructure 60. Alafu education nitapatia 40. Kwa sababu tutengeleze kazi kwa wale watu ambao wamemaliza shule kwanza. Hao ambao watapata kazi wakuje, wengine watakuja watasaidia jamii yao na watasomesha wale wengine.
Not all will be employed in the white collar jobs, indicating that a lot of resources should go to education such that as many people as possible can be educated, and those ones who cannot be employed in the white collar jobs can be employed, can self-employ themselves. In the infrastructure, as we have gone through the document, we have found that some sectors can provide money for itself, like the petroleum. It will sell its petrol and it will get its money from elsewhere. So I tend to think education should be given more. In this case, 70. And then the other one will get 30.
How many are for 70-30 by a show of hands? Aya. How many are for 60-40? So our decision is 70-30.
In Homa Bay, we saw a lot of, because one of the expectations with deliberations is that people will, give proposals, there will be counter proposals, and people will push each other to justify why they are giving certain proposals. And we saw that in Homa Bay, basically all rounded. Homa Bay had very good discussions. I think also the fact that I think the group we had in Homa Bay also had professionals, people from the CSO world. Is definitely Homa Bay had more heated discussions, but at the same time we saw a lot of the counter checking.
Most of these departments in IAA, you need education. From basic to tertiary education, for you to be employed in the Department of Energy, for you to be employed in the AII's department, you need basic education. So if we invest more on education, every other department, including the IAA, will just fall in place.
Like, we're talking of education, right? We have trained engineers, we have teachers, and we have doctors. Yet we don't have infrastructure. Now that's my one. Because we train them, yet we are not utilizing the resource. So to me, I was saying that infrastructure is the core to any economic development.
when I look at infrastructure and energy, I'm looking at roads, I'm looking at buildings, I'm looking at power, I'm looking at everything that supports the people who will be taking what? Part in the research. So I will say if I was to give 70, then I will be taking 70 to energy and infrastructure. That is where my argument is. Because we're looking at how supportive. We need, yes, we do need, education needs an allocation. According to me, the allocation that they need is will be consumed, and it's on salaries and it's on research. And it's all on administration and operations. But then again, when we're looking at roads, how much of it do we have? We need to access either the health facilities, we need to access educational centers, we also need to have more buildings, we also need to build more ICT hubs, we also need to have more power supplied into these areas.
Relation should get 60. More for education?
Yeah, energy 40, education 60.
Okay, that's one. Energy 60, education 40.
What we focus on a lot is how is it that the public can better understand how budgets are developed, how your money is spent, and everything in between. So our big focus is always on budget transparency. You as a citizen, how do you access your budgets? Do you understand them? Are they helpful for you whenever you're trying to understand what the government is doing? Secondly, we also focus a lot on public participation. The reason why we want the public to access budgets is because we want them to engage better. So for example, what we are doing today is part of our initiative to kind of see how is it that public participation can improve when it comes to how we prepare our budgets in the country. And now, of course, you know, we have county and national. Every year in February, size it took of February, every year in February, the national government, at the national level, that you still have your ministries and you still have your Ministry of Finance, at the national level, we have to decide how much money we are going to give all the sectors that exist in government. At the national level, we have 10 sectors. Okay? Now, the 10 sectors include sectors like health, education, public administration, and others. Under each of the sectors, you have ministries. So for example, under the sector education, you have a number of ministries there. You have a state department for basic education, you have a state department for university education, and the rest. So even in the budget, that is how the budget is arranged, is that you have 10 sectors, we have to decide how much money we give to each of those 10 sectors. Then when we've given each of those sectors their money, then now those sectors have to decide how much money they are going to give to each of their ministries. When we passed the constitution, we decided to split up shughuli za serikali. Government functions were broken up. We have some at the county and we have some at the national level. So when you're preparing a county budget, you have to make sure you are budgeting for functions that are given to counties. When you're planning for the national government and budgeting for it, you have to make sure you are putting in money into functions that belong to the national government. The budget policy statement is a point where we make a decision of, do we want to give more money to agriculture than education? Do we want to give more money to infrastructure than security? That is the right time when this decision is made. Every year, we give every sector money. Every year, they spend the money. The question is, how well do they spend that money? If we give you 100 shillings to spend on something, at the end of the year, we should come back and ask ourselves, did they spend the 100 shillings they asked for? And number two, did they achieve the things they said they will achieve with their 100 shillings? You are thinking, is the kind of money that is being budgeted for by this sector reliable enough? Are we sure that this money will actually come? And what does historical trends tell us? For example, in Kenya, we know that departments that are dependent on loans struggle to spend money because sababu loan huwa zinakuja at different times of the year. Sometimes they come very much towards the end of the year. And as you know, with government procurement, it takes a long time. So pesa ikikuja towards the end of the year, then it means hiyo ministry inaweza kosa kutumia hiyo pesa within that year. At the end of the year, it will be written that that ministry did not actually achieve its budget obligations. Sekta ya elimu kazi yake ni kutengeneza wananchi ambao wanaweza kushughulikia zile challenges ambazo tuko nazo kama nchi. You are building the capacity of a country in terms of its human labor. The capacity to deal with the challenges that the country is dealing with. The capacity to implement the priorities ambazo serikali inajaribu kufanya. Infrastructure has a big role in opening up the country, making connection easier, and making it easier for people to do business. A lot of what we do under infrastructure is building our physical infrastructure, the capacity of a country physically. Do you have a transport system that works? Those are the kind of problems you are trying to solve. You're trying to make it easier for people to do business. You're trying to make it easier for people to move from point A to point B. And you're trying to make the cost of living to be affordable because it's not very expensive to do business.
Roads and transport has been put as a priority, and there's a demand of that. So there's an increase in terms of allocation. On Department of Housing and Urban Development, you find on Department of Housing and Urban Development, whereby the details of the program entails housing departments and human and the settlement, urban and metropolitan development, general administration planning and the support services, and regulation and development of the construction industry. In that budget, they'd put a priority on regulation and development of the construction industry. But during the budgeting, it is there, but during the budgeting, it's not what mentioned. If you are trying to make an analysis based on the percentages, or you may find you cannot estimate an historical allocation of money per department based on the percentages. It has a challenge because you have seen in that document some has got a 4-4, but if you see in terms of allocation, another one has got like 5 billion, the other one has got like 4 billion. But you find the percentages are the same. So during the analysis, you have to factor in terms of the percentage and actual pricing or actual money which has been allocated in that in the sector. Money has been allocated, yes, but during the distribution of that money, as per the activities in the sectorial, you find that money is not budgeted for.